Hi guys, it's Kathy. I hope you're doing well. So we made it to day 7 a.m. That's what we're doing today. And I was looking and it looks like the next couple days were not popular. Like nobody watched them. But then when it got to day like 14, I think, those videos have a whole bunch of views for some reason. So let's get to day 14. I don't know what happens, but it must be good. It must be the good part. Oh, I bet you Kelly's on trial then. I mean, Kelly is on the stand, oh, the witness stand. What do you think? Or his wife? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Let's keep going. Let's get to the next day, guys. Here we go.
Larry, are we ready? Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. All right. All right, we'll talk in the meantime. I'll be right with you, Miss. We won't let the jury in until you're ready. But I understood the state had something they wanted to address with the court.
Yes, Your Honor, I just wanted to make sure, I have asked Mr. Larkin to advise Mrs. Kelly of the court's ruling with respect to hearsay of Mr. Kelly. And he told me in the hallway, just understand that Mrs. Kelly doesn't understand what hearsay is. So I had a brief conversation with her where I explained, unless I specifically ask her something that her husband said, she's not allowed to offer that. She seemed to understand, but I think it might be helpful if the court advises her of that. Also, we just discovered that the transcripts that we received from the defense regarding Ron Martinelli's conversations with Mrs. Kelly are not accurate. And so some of them, there are clips that I don't know if I'm going to have to play them for her, but I may have to play some clips for her from the Martinelli transcript. So I just wanted to advise the court of that.
Okay. Well, I understand your concern. She's a lay witness. She doesn't understand hearsay, but you've discussed it with Mr. Larkin, her legal representative, and I think you said you talked to her directly as well with Mr.
I
Larkin.
did in the hall this morning with Mr. Larkin present, just so the court's aware.
So I'm not going to address her individually. I understand your concerns, but it's singling her out as a witness, and I don't feel comfortable doing that. And well, actually, the only time we've had a problem with a witness who's been non-responsive that's caused a problem so far, frankly, has been with Dr. Tim, who yesterday, after an objection had been made, blurted out an answer that had to be stricken, and then did it again. You can't tell me this is her first rodeo in court. So, that was a state witness who caused a problem, and an answer had to be stricken. But I understand your concerns, and we will be vigilant, and I'll be vigilant if I'm pretty quick on the trigger for those kind of things, I think, and if that comes up, we'll stop it and deal with it right away. But
And just so you know, Your Honor, I tried to resolve the issue with the recordings by sending those 2 days ago to to Mr. Larkin. And he advised me that the email that I forwarded to him with the recordings that I received from Ms. Larkin, that he was unable to open. So he did not have his client listen to those. I don't know what the problem was. We were able to open it. They came from Ms. Larkin. I don't know why he couldn't have addressed
well,
it.
and if you need to correct her or refresh her recollection, you're welcome to do that with
Thank you.
with the recording. That's appropriate. That's appropriate
Thank you,
examination.
Judge.
All right. You are all gathering your exhibits. Are you ready, everybody?
We're not, Judge. I still don't have mine. If I could just have a minute to
Sure.
organize. I have a number of exhibits today.
Mrs. Kelly's coming on the stand today? Is that what I just heard? Delay of game, 15-yard penalty, first down, automatic first down. I hope she hears Saints a lot. I just hope she does. I think it'll be cute. I think it'll be fun. Well, George said, and then George said, and then you know what George said?
And we can help you out too. We can help you out too.
Come on, people. Daylight is wasting while you're playing with your paperwork. She's got a lot of exhibits today. We can't see exhibits. That's not right. It hurts my feelings. Except I don't want to see some of the pictures. So, okay, I'm good with that. Get them, Judge. Cough louder. Let them know. Remember what a great opening statement she made? Oh, good times. Maybe something like that will happen again.
Anyway, since we're waiting, I think today's the day we're hoping to break at 4, I believe. I think, council, are we breaking at 4 today to go? Okay, so
Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. It's good to hear. Ready? All right. No problem. Let's bring in the jurors, please.
Let's roll, nerds.
And can I have the screen, Valeria?
Jose's trying to toast me out on this thing. I'm sorry. Are you ready? Yeah, we're ready. You guys- So if you have to use the audio, is that, Jorge's telling me that's only for Ms. Kelly.
Your Honor, I'm happy to, I think it can be played. I think it's legitimate to play it for everyone. And so I'd prefer to do it that way. I know that Jorge was trying to figure out a way to do it.
I mean, we have a laptop here. We have some headphones. You can play the video here, and then only she can hear it or he can hear it.
What if,
My preference is to play it for the jury as well, Your Honor.
well, it's not the proper way to refresh recollection. Well,
Please rise, por favor.
we'll just deal with it as it comes.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for coughing, Judge.
Good morning. Everyone, please have a seat. The record will show the presence of all the jurors, counsel, and the defendant, and we're on the record. Good morning to everybody. I just wanted to take a moment to talk to you about something. I don't think I've ever done this before. Not a big deal, but I in this particular case, I really just want to acknowledge some of the really hard work that has been put into this case by court staff and others, everyone from law enforcement providing some additional security, it's cleaning people who come in every night. I mean, all these people coming in and out of the courtroom, just too many people to name and to say, tell you what they do. I don't want to take up time doing that. I've done many, many trials. I've never had one go as near to perfect as this one so far. Putting aside the little water problem that we had before that was out of our control. But a tremendous amount of work. There's too many people to name who have really put in a lot of hard work to make this trial run as smoothly so that your experience is productive. I set this trial for this time period because we really want to, when we pick a jury, we try and stay away from holidays. It's really hard to choose a jury on holidays because people have travel plans. So I wedged this in between spring break and summer break. And, once you have summer break, it's very difficult because people have family and travel plans. And then you get into November and December and all those holidays. So I set it for this time. But there is one person here whose dedication and commitment I really want to acknowledge. And it's gone, excuse me, beyond the call of duty. The court reporter is here with us. Her family, spouse, children, grandchildren are all on a beach in the Bahamas. And and when we talked about it, I said, Denise, let's find a replacement, or a substitute. And she said, no, this is an important trial, and I want to be there and do it. It's like I said, it's above and beyond the call of duty. And yesterday also was her birthday. So while her husband was sipping fruity rum drinks on a beach in the Bahamas, watching grandchildren and children frolic in the ocean, she was eating dinner alone last night at a local restaurant. So really it's, and what birthday was that, Denise? 34, 35? 34, right, all right. She's not under oath. We all pay a lot in taxes, and I don't like where a lot of my tax dollars go. A lot of it's wasted. I'm sure many of you feel the same way. But every once in a while, as a taxpayer, it's important for you to know that your money is well spent. And it's been very well spent with all the work these people have done, and particular acknowledgement and thanks for the dedication and commitment that the court reporter showed. So with that, thank you, and the state can call us next week.
That hurt my heart. That did. Oh, that poor woman.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Wanda Kelly.
Oh my gosh. It's Mrs. Kelly.
By the way, that name is spelled V-A-S. Good morning, ma'am. If you would step forward here to the clerk. She'll swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in the matter before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Thank you. If you would come over here, come around here and step up to the witness stand, please. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Mrs. Kelly. Could you please tell the jury your full name, and could you spell your middle name and your last name for the court reporter?
My full name is Wanda Corral Kelly, And did you say spell the last name?
If you'd spell the middle and the last name for the court reporter so she can take it down.
Okay. Correll is Correll. Kelly is Kelly.
Thank you. And I see you struggling a little bit with that microphone. Let me see if I can help you so you don't have to lean forward like that.
But I can't hear you, man.
You can't hear me in the microphone?
Now, when you were standing back there, no.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
If I put the microphone a little closer, that works a little better for you?
Yes, it does.
Okay, great. Mrs. Kelly, you're married to the defendant, George Allen Kelly, is that right?
Correct.
53 or 54 years?
It will be 54 in August, so it's 53 right now.
53 years. And Mrs. Kelly, how do you usually refer to your husband?
How do I refer to him?
Right. His name is George Allen Kelly. How do you
Oh,
refer to him?
Personal.
We call him Alan
Allen.
because his dad's name was George. So
Okay.
to separate the two, they called Alan Allen.
So if
Fair.
the jury hears you refer to someone named Allen, you're talking about your husband. Is that right?
That's right.
Now, I want to talk to you a little bit just about the background, your background, before we get started with the events of this case. If I understand correctly, you and your husband grew up in North Carolina, is that right?
Correct.
And then you married after college,
We married after college.
and then you moved to Tennessee for a bit, correct?
Correct.
And then from there, you went to Montana and you opened a fishing and hunting lodge, right?
Well, not right away, but we did eventually open that in Montana, yes.
Okay. So, and then y'all had a fishing and hunting lodge there for a number of years. Is
Yes,
that
we
right?
did. Yes, we did.
And you have two sons,
2 sons, yes.
and one of your sons is named Matt Kelly. Is that correct?
Yes,
And both your sons helped you with that hunting lodge when y'all were in Montana, correct?
correct.
Now, at some point, you ended up in Arizona. Is that right?
Correct.
When did you come out to Arizona?
Well, we came down for a visit in probably 93 or 92 because I had always wanted to move to Arizona. I read a book about it when I was in the 3rd grade and said, that's where I'm going. And so we came down and looked at places and we eventually bought a place in 97.
And that was out in Elgin, is that right?
Yes,
And you lived out in Elgin, and then you ended up moving over to Keno Springs, correct?
correct,
And it was the golfing that took you over to Keno Springs, correct?
correct.
You and your husband, you'd refer to yourself as golf addicts back in that time frame, correct?
We did.
And the first property you purchased is not the property you're on now, is that right?
First property we purchased was over in Elgin.
In Keno Springs.
Oh, in Keno Springs. No,
Right.
that is not the property we are on now.
And that was a property that had 4 parcels and they were each about 40 acres, right?
Correct.
And that was over in the village in Keno Springs,
The reserve.
the reserve. And then y'all decided that didn't give you quite enough privacy, is that right?
Correct.
And then you traded that property for the property you have now at 100 Willow Cross Circle.
Objection
Correct.
leading.
I mean, overruled. I think this is just beginning foundational, so objections overruled.
Yes, then we did that.
Am I holding it close enough? Is that the issue?
How are you doing, Mrs. Kelly?
I'm going.
Morning. Are you hearing all right? Because we have devices that we can use.
Well, she speaks softly.
But how are you doing? Can you hear all
I
right?
do all right with my hearing aids
Well-
if she speaks into the microphone loudly.
All right, well, if you have a problem, let us know because we have some other options.
Okay, thank you.
Don't you worry, Mrs. Kelly. The other lawyer's coming up next. She's very loud.
Now, back in January of 2023, you and your husband had some cattle, is that right?
In January of when?
2023,
2023.
the month
We
that
have
this.
cattle, yes, we have cattle.
Okay, and you had that cattle not on your ranch, but over in Sonoyta at the time?
That's correct.
And that's because y'all were having a drought on your property, correct?
Yes, we had a drought.
But you had some other animals that you keep on your property, is that right?
Yes, we have a horse.
And do you have other household animals?
Well, we had horses and cattle before the drought.
Okay, but I'm talking about in January of 2023, what animals did you keep on your property at that time?
Oh, Gary Wisdom had some cattle on there.
And that was just 1 or 2 cows, is that right?
I think it was 3.
Okay. And then did you keep other animals in your house?
Did I keep what?
Animals in your house?
Yes, my cat.
Okay, your cat. And did your husband have some dogs?
I'm sorry.
Did your husband have some dogs?
Oh, yes, we have dogs.
How many dogs do you have?
Right now we have 4.
And back in January of 2023, how many dogs did you have?
2.
And I want to show you now what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 114. If I could have the screen. Do you recognize this aerial photograph of your property?
Yes, I do.
And does that accurately depict your house and your property?
Yes,
I'm showing you now what's been previously admitted as State's Exhibit 115. Do you recognize that?
do I recognize what?
Is that an aerial photograph of your property?
Yes,
And that includes your house, your barn, and 2 pump houses, correct?
yes.
Okay. And now I'd like to show just the witness an exhibit. And Mrs. Kelly, I'm showing you now what's been marked as State's Exhibit 129. Are you familiar with the outline of your parcel, like what your property lines look like?
Yes, a little bit.
Does that look accurate?
Yes,
Move for admission of State's Exhibit 129.
No objection.
Exhibit 129 is admitted.
Move to publish.
Yes.
Ma'am, is this an outline of your property lines?
as best I know.
And you have a fence around the exterior of your property, correct?
Correct.
And just so that the jury has a little bit of a orientation, could you show us on this map where your house is? And I know this is a little bit tough, but there's a screen right here. If you take the stylus that's right here and you touch right here, it'll give you a color
Touch where?
right here in the corner. And then if you just circle where your house is. Okay, great, thank you. And now could you also circle where your barn is?
He's saying she's wrong. I love married people.
And there's a little pump house not far from your barn, is that right?
There is.
Do you see that on the map?
Well, it looks like right there.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Kelly. Now, you talked about a couple of horses that you keep on your property, is that right?
Yes,
You have one horse now.
Yes.
And what's your horse's name?
Sunny.
I'm showing you now. What's been admitted as State's Exhibit 120. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, that looks like Sunny.
Okay. And I'm going to apologize to Sunny for the next photograph from 120 because it looks like they caught Sunny a little bit indisposed. But is this also a photograph of Sunny?
Yes.
And would you describe Sunny as a skinny horse?
A skinny horse?
Right.
Not really.
You can see his ribs in these pictures, is that right?
Yes. Yes. I'm sorry.
And Sunny is how would you describe Sunny?
He's a 29-year-old horse.
And does he have a color or a type? What do you call him?
A color or a type?
Did you tell me in a meeting that we had previously that he's a red roan?
He's part Arabic horse and part quarter horse, I believe it was.
Okay, you didn't tell me he's a red roan?
I may have called him red like a roan,
Okay,
but he's not a red roan.
okay. All right, thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's okay, no problem. And so, but you'd agree that he's red in color, correct?
Yes, yes,
And he's got some white coloration on his forehead, correct?
correct.
I just want to ask you a couple of questions about your husband first. Now, I believe since December of 2021, has your husband patrolled your property with an AK-47 and a handgun?
Since when, hon?
December of 2021.
Yes,
And you'd agree with me that a normal place for him to keep his AK-47 is the coat tree by the front door, correct?
that was the place for several years, months. He moves it off and I don't keep up with it.
At one point, you told me that that was the normal place for him to keep it, correct?
That was in the beginning.
And Mrs. Kelly, the officers asked you, the officers collected your cell phone in this case, is that right?
Yes,
And we asked you for the passcode for your phone, and you refused to provide it, is that correct?
I don't think I remember it. I only had the phone about 2 months.
But I asked you for it, and you told me you refused to give it to me, is that right?
Right.
And you'd agree with me that some important events happened in this case using your iPhone?
Your Honor, I'm going to object again to leading.
Sustained.
Your Honor, can we have a bench conference about that?
Well, I think you're going to ask the question a different way.
Okay, sure. Mrs. Kelly, did you and I talk in something called a deposition?
Yes,
And did I ask you for the passcode for your phone?
I think you did.
Your Honor, asked and answered to the passcode.
Perhaps I forgot which question I had just asked when I got interrupted, Your Honor. I apologize.
Interrupted.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think everyone's a little
Judge is not happy.
lost at this point.
I
So
think-
let's start again with the
Sure.
line of questioning. So the objection is sustained, but let's start again.
Thank you. I think, I'm not sure where we were in the questioning when we, a second ago, but I asked you, and I want to make sure I understood, you indicated that I asked you, you agreed that I asked you in a deposition for your passcode, is that right?
Correct,
And you refused to provide that to me, correct?
correct.
Now I want to turn now to the events of January 30th of 2023. Before anything happened that day, what were you doing?
Just the normal clean up the kitchen after breakfast, empty the dishwasher from the night before, laundry, just normal things.
Okay. And Your Honor, if I could ask the detective to bring the whiteboard over for me?
Well, the skeleton's gone, guys. I don't see the
I wanna make sure that I
skeleton.
can see it.
Your Honor, may I realign myself to
Yes.
the side to watch?
Absolutely.
So I wonder if the family was told, you know, like, look, there's a whole bunch of people here today that weren't here the other days. Now he's always here. This guy is always here. Um, she was here the first day. He was here the first day. He was here, I think, the first day. The police officer doesn't count. But the rest of the people, I wonder if they told the family that Mrs. Kelly was going to testify today, and that's why this side is a bit more full. I don't know if you remember, both of these sides were way more full the first day. There was a bunch of people over here too. I don't know where they went. Now, this guy's still here, and we found out that he belongs to her. I don't know about this guy. I can't really remember about this guy, but there's more people over here. So what I'm guessing is they told the family Mrs. Kelly was going to testify.
I'll do the same.
Can everyone see that whiteboard? So, okay, you were doing regular household chores that morning, you said, and then what's the next thing that happened? What were you doing just before your husband came in that day?
I think I had finished eating my lunch. I was in the kitchen.
Okay, and did you have your cat somewhere nearby?
Oh, yes, my cat's always nearby, but she likes to lay on the back of Alan's chair. So I go in there and rub her.
So were you playing with your cat that day?
I did that day, but I don't know at what time you're talking about.
Okay, so I'm talking about just as Alan's coming in the house that day in the afternoon.
I was not rubbing the cat when he came in, no.
Okay, what were you doing?
I had finished my lunch. I guess I was cleaning up the kitchen.
Were you watching TV?
The TV was on, yes.
And what were you watching?
It's on the, keep the mic.
What were you watching?
I think Fox News was on. It's on, but I don't always watch. I just hear.
And you had that on what volume?
Probably, I don't know how you say it, but it was probably about 20 or 25 out of 100.
Did you call that a medium volume when we talked?
Yes.
So you had Fox News on, and then at some point, did Alan come in?
Yes, he did.
And what did he come in for?
He came in to have lunch.
And you remember what he had for lunch?
Yes, I do. It's a strange sandwich. Peanut butter, mayonnaise, and pineapple.
And just
No, tell me she didn't just say those 3 words. I don't know if any of you ever watched my live stream, but I can't believe she just said those 3 words. I gotta make a short about this right away. That's the greatest thing she could have said. I can't believe it.
just before the events of this case happened, where were you standing?
Well, when he came in to make his sandwich, I asked him if he needed any help. He said no. So I went into the living room and started playing with my cat.
So at this point, you're in the living room playing with the cat.
Yes, I am.
And where is Alan?
He's in the kitchen at the, it's not the island, but there's a bar that has an opening that you can see from the kitchen into the living room. And he was making his sandwich there and looking at the news to see if anything had happened.
So he's standing there eating his lunch at the island, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. He was eating his lunch at the counter.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Are you handling this? Mrs. Kelly, I'm going to show you a series of photographs marked as State's Exhibit 123. Could you take a look at each of those photographs? And then when you're done, just let me know that you've reviewed them.
Yes, I recognize these.
Do each of those photographs accurately depict either the interior or the exterior of your house?
Yes.
Your Honor, move for admission of State's Exhibit 123.
Exhibit 123 is admitted.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 123G. Is that one of the photographs I just showed you?
Yes.
And does that photograph show from the exterior of your house looking at the east side of your residence?
Yes. No, it's not the east side. Let me think.
When you come out the patio is that the
Yes,
east
it's
patio?
east. It's
Okay.
east.
And it looks like there's a red circle around two of the windows. Could you tell us what those two windows are?
The two windows to the living room.
And it says living room windows on the slide. That would be accurate, correct?
Correct.
So when you said you were in the living room that day, would that be the area of the house, just so the jury has an idea where you were that day?
Yes.
I'm showing you now what's been marked as and admitted as Exhibit 123H. Is that one of the photographs of the interior of your living room?
Yes.
And I see two windows in this photograph. Are those the windows we were looking at from the outside in the previous picture?
Yes,
I'm showing you now Exhibit 123C. Is this another photograph of the interior of your living room and those two windows?
yes,
Stalker.
And I'm showing you now Exhibit 123B. Is this another photograph of your living room? B
yes,
as in boy.
yes.
And what are we looking at here?
I'm sorry?
So I see a tan chair. Is that a recliner?
That is, the tan chair, the big one is a recliner, yes.
Okay, and then there's a brown chair on the left. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
And then I see a letter F through an archway. Can you tell me what we're looking at through that archway?
That is the opening into the hall. And, excuse me, if you go to the right, once you pass that opening, you go out a door to the patio area that we saw earlier. If you go left, you go back to the bedrooms. And also you can see an opening where my office is.
So straight ahead, that's your office area.
Yes, the little opening where you can see through, see the big opening and then the little opening, and my office is right there.
Okay, so the first archway is to the hallway, and then the second archway that's a little bit to the right, that one goes into your office.
Correct.
And then what's past your office back there?
My bedroom,
Is that the master bedroom?
yes,
And is there also a door from your master bedroom out onto that patio we saw a minute ago?
yes,
So you have two doors out to your east patio, correct?
correct.
And then where is the kitchen from this photograph? If you're looking at the photograph, which way, right or left, would the kitchen be?
Left,
So directly to the left in this photograph is your kitchen.
correct.
I'm showing you now what's been marked as State's Exhibit and admitted as State's Exhibit 123A. Could you tell the jury what we're looking at now?
This is my living room and the opening into the kitchen.
And what is this wall here that has the letter B on it?
That's the wall, that the refrigerator's on the other side of that wall.
And is that wall between your living room and your kitchen?
Yes,
Showing you now what's been marked as State's Exhibit 123D as in dog. Where is this photograph?
it's standing in the living room, looking into my kitchen.
So that wall we were looking at, that doesn't go all the way through, it's got a cutout, is that fair to say?
There is a cutout, yes,
And is that a counter that is between your living room and your kitchen?
correct.
And then in the background, is that the kitchen that we're seeing?
Yes,
And on the left in this photograph, is that the kitchen island you were talking about where Alan was standing making his lunch?
no, he was not standing at the island. He was standing right here at this opening.
Okay, so you believe he was standing at the counter at the opening?
Yes,
And we'll get to that in just a second. But let's go on to the next photograph. I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 123E. And what is this a picture of?
it's my kitchen and dining room.
And is that just the opposite view? You can see the cutout for the counter in this photograph, sort of in the middle on the, sort of to the right is in the top of the photograph. Is that right?
I'm sorry, would you repeat the question?
Sure, that
Yeah.
was a terrible question.
Yeah.
Let me ask it again.
No, do it
So-
the same way.
Can you see the cutout that we were just talking about where the counter is between the living room and the kitchen?
Yes, you can see the cutout.
And that's sort of toward the top middle of the photograph, right?
It's to the left of the refrigerator.
That's helpful, thank you. And then to the right of the refrigerator, is that the doorway or the opening between the kitchen into the living room?
Correct.
Now, Mrs. Kelly, I think this is 123H. Is this also a photograph of your living room?
Yes.
And I think we already covered that one, so. I'm showing you now what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 123F. And is this another exterior photograph from your east, looking at your east patio?
Yes.
And the red circle, is that circling the windows?
Yes.
And the blue circle, is that your east patio door?
That is the patio door. Yes.
And then to the right of that, is that your master bedroom door that we talked about a minute ago?
Yes.
So when Alan was standing at you say the counter, is that right? Having his lunch?
Alan was standing at the counter having his lunch.
And you're in the living room, is that right?
Yes.
And then what's the next thing that happened?
Alan said, Wanda, be quiet. And he said he started coming from the kitchen into the living room where I was. And then he said, I just heard a shot. And me, being curious, I was standing behind that light gray big recliner, and my cat was right there on the back, and I was rubbing her. And me being curious, I stepped over to my left and looked out the window. And I saw two men with big backpacks. They were dressed in.
I'm going to stop you for a minute because I'm trying to write this down while we talk, okay? So you said that Alan told you to be quiet and that he heard a shot.
Yes.
And then you said you looked outside. You went to the living room window.
Yes.
So I want to make sure I know where you were in the living room. I'm going to go back to State's Exhibit 123B. And can you tell the jury where you were standing when Alan said this to you?
Behind the light brown chair. My cat was lying up on the top.
So the one that's on the right, more
Ye-
forward in the picture?
Yes.
All right. And then after Alan made that statement, where did you go?
I walked to the left behind the dark chair and looked out the window.
And which window did you look out? Let me get the picture up for you of both windows. And I have State's Exhibit 123H up for you. Can you tell me which window you were looking out?
The one on the left of the TV.
And what did you see when you looked out that window?
I saw two men walking they were dressed in dark camo or light camo. I can't remember. What stood out was the fact that they had these big brown backpacks on them. and they were carrying rifles.
So you say two men, big brown backpacks. And you said rifles, is that right?
Correct.
And what else did you observe? Did you say camo?
The camo, I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly the color. It just happened so fast. The only thing that's blaring is the fact that they were dressed alike and that they had these backpacks and guns. I didn't pay attention to the color of the camo. I'm sorry.
And you said they were walking, is that right?
Yes, they were.
And they were walking parallel to your residence, right?
Correct.
You never saw them walk toward your house, right?
No, because once I saw them,
Let me just
And-
stop you.
okay,
And you never saw them point a gun at anyone or anything of that nature, correct?
correct.
And then after you saw these men walking parallel, what distance were they from the residence?
I'm sorry, couldn't hear you.
What distance were they from the residence?
Well, they were actually close, and I can remember telling you that they were about a football field away, but that is incorrect because I haven't been on a football field in 34 years. And the only ones I've seen are on TV. And on the aerial thing of TV, I'm looking, well, it could be about that far. But that's what I told you.
And what distance do you think they are?
After measuring it, they were 100 feet.
Someone gave her these answers. Please. You
Now,
can tell.
after you looked out the window, what's the next thing you did?
Alan said, call Border Patrol. So I had my phone in my hip pocket. I took it out, walked to the refrigerator where I have the Border Patrol's number, dialed it in, started walking over toward where Alan was, and while the phone was dialing and ringing.
So you called Jeremy on your iPhone, is that right?
That's correct.
And you said you handed that phone to Alan?
Yes, I did.
And where did you hand it to Alan?
At the patio door. He was still inside.
So we're looking at States Exhibit 123B. And I think you told us that if you go through that archway and turn right, that's where that patio door is, correct?
Correct.
So you handed him the phone while he was still inside the house. And did he talk to Jeremy at that point?
He did.
And then after he talked to Jeremy, what did he do with the phone?
He handed it back to me.
And after he handed it back to you, what did he do next?
He went outside.
Did he have anything with him when he went outside?
Yes.
What did he have with him?
His AK.
How are you doing, Mrs. Kelly? If you need a break, let us know, okay?
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Very well.
And Mrs. Kelly, what do you recall about the AK?
A green strap. Don't recognize rifles from each other. I just know that his had a green strap on it.
And Mrs. Kelly, I'm going to show you what's previously admitted as States Exhibit 34, image 4637. Do you recognize that?
Yes,
And is that Alan's AK with the green strap?
yes,
And that's the gun he had with him that day, is that right?
correct.
And I just want to make sure I'm clear. Before Alan went outside, you never heard any shots, is that right?
I did not, no.
Once you saw Alan go out the patio, east patio door, where did you go?
I went and stood in front of the TV so I could not see out either of the windows.
And I'm showing you again, States Exhibit 123A. Is there a TV in this photograph?
Yes, it has a horse picture on it.
Okay, and so is that TV that you're talking about the one in between those two living room windows we've been talking about?
Yes,
So you stood right there, is that right?
correct.
And then after you went to the east patio window, what did you hear?
After I went to the east patio window, when?
Sorry, that was a bad question. When you said you saw Alan go out the east patio door
Correct.
and you walked over around and you're standing in front of the TV, what's the first thing you hear?
I heard gunshots.
And where were the gunshots that you heard?
Very close.
Did you believe that was Alan's gunshots?
Yes.
And how many shots did you hear?
I don't know. I didn't count. 5, 6. That was not a priority.
And when you heard those shots, what did you do?
I just stood there, frozen.
And what did you assume those shots were?
I assumed they were Alan shooting up in the air
And why did you assume that?
because that's what he does when he knows they're trespassers close. He shoots up into the air as a warning. You're close enough. Go home.
So you heard 5 or 6 shots, and was that his AK or his handgun?
I don't know the difference.
Is one really loud and one not quite as loud?
Well, they were really loud because he
Okay.
was just on the other side.
So you heard 5 or 6 really loud shots just the other side of the area where you were. Is that right?
Correct.
And do you know where Alan was standing when he made these shots?
I did not see where he was standing, but when he went out the patio door, as I was closing it, I saw him go toward the right side of that paved area.
So we're back to States Exhibit 123. G. When you say he went right out of the east patio door, would that have been somewhere near the living room windows, or would that be the other direction?
Near the windows.
Okay, so were you able to see him from where you were?
If I had looked out the window, I could have seen him.
But you didn't look out the window, right?
No, I did not.
Okay. And after you heard those shots, what did you do?
Well, when the shots stopped. I just stand there. I'm afraid to look.
At some point you did look out, is that right?
I did. I walked to the left window from the, well, on this picture here, it'd be the right window in the red circle. But
Okay,
inside, it was the left window. I looked, and he wasn't lying on the ground. So I said, "Thank you, Lord."
And-
Then I went and looked out the other window.
and what did you see when you looked out the other window?
I saw Alan and his dogs walking down the dirt path right there where his trailers are parked, headed down towards the wash in the barn.
Okay, and is that the direction that you saw the people headed?
I didn't see the people head anywhere.
When you told me a minute ago that you looked out the window, you saw them walking parallel to your house. That would have been in the southeast direction, correct?
Correct.
And that's the direction your husband headed, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever see the two men walk toward the house?
Would you repeat that?
Did you ever see the two men walk toward your house?
No.
Did you ever see them point a gun at anyone?
No.
When Alan went out on the back patio, did you ever hear him say anything?
Did I hear him say anything?
Correct.
No.
The only shots you heard when he went outside were Alan's shots. Is that right?
They were close. I don't know if that's the only ones, but yes.
Didn't you tell me in a deposition that the only shots you heard were Alan's shots?
I told you that in the deposition that the shots I heard were very close. So I assumed they were Alan shots.
Okay. And you don't remember telling me specifically the only shots you heard were Alan's shots?
I can't guarantee that. I can't say that under oath that it actually was the only shots fired. I just know I heard the ones close to my house.
All right. We'll look at the transcript in a minute if that'll help you refresh your recollection. But you don't have any reason to believe those shots were anybody's shots but Alan's, correct?
Correct.
Valeria, could you turn off the screen for a second? Yeah. Now, Mrs. Kelly, I want to talk to you about some of the statements that you've made in this case. You've made a number of statements, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
You talked to Agent Heredia on January 30th. After this happened, law enforcement came out to your house, right?
Yes.
And you talked to a Border Patrol agent named Heredia. And if you don't know his name, that's okay.
I don't know their names.
Okay. And then you talked to 2 different deputies that day as well. Is that right?
There was a man and a woman.
And you talked to, there were actually 4 deputies out at your house that met up with you. There was a man and a woman, and then there was a separate man and a woman, correct?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Sure. So there were quite a few deputies at your house that day, right?
What time?
At the first occasion that the deputies came to your house, there were a number of them, correct?
At the first occasion when they came out, I saw 2 deputies, a man and a woman and 2 border patrols.
So you don't remember talking to a man and a woman and then later talking to a different man and a different woman?
No, I don't remember that. They probably all look the same.
And then at some point after that, you spoke to Detective Ainsa later that night, correct?
Correct.
And then you've actually spoken to a defense investigator named Ron Martinelli on 3 separate occasions, correct?
3,
Yes.
I don't know how many times, but yes, I've talked to Ron Martinelli.
So you may have spoken to him more than 3 times, is that right? He's been at your house a number of times.
Yes, doing investigations.
And you also participated in 2 separate depositions, correct?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Sure. You also participated in 2 separate depositions, correct?
With whom?
With me.
With you, yes.
Now, I want to talk through your statements that you gave over the course of that period of time, specifically with respect to how many people you encountered that day. Now, when Border Patrol first got there, you told them that there were 5 people. Is that right?
I don't remember telling them anything
Okay.
on the number of people. I just told them where the people had been walking.
So I'll show you a copy of the agent's report about what you said to him, and we'll see if that refreshes your recollection, okay?
Okay.
Your Honor, I'm going to object using someone else's report as a reflection to refresh her memory. She wants to state it, but she's not the author of this report. And that officer wrote the report, and so I don't know how that's going to help her. That's just what he wrote.
Well, we'll see whether it helps her or not. The objection's overruled. Anything can be shown to a witness for purposes of refreshing recollection. So the objection's overruled. All right, so we're going to follow the proper procedure for this. You can show the witness whatever it is you want to show her, the things you've identified for purposes of trying to refresh her recollection. Then you're to retrieve those exhibits and ask the questions.
Showing what's been marked as State's Exhibit 53, and if you could take a look at the first paragraph here of Agent Ferretti's report.
And Mrs. Kelly, the witness, when you're done reviewing that, just tell us that you're done reviewing it, okay? Thank you.
Yes. finished. I'm finished.
Has that refreshed your memory?
No,
So you don't remember talking to Agent Heredia that day?
I do not.
And then you spoke with one of the deputies that day as well, or you said you recalled speaking to at least 2 deputies, is that right?
I remember there was a man and a woman, deputies there, and 2 border patrols.
I'm going to show you now what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1. And this is Deputy Castaneda's report. And if you could start with this paragraph here and read the last 2 paragraphs.
Same procedure, okay?
I'm finished.
And has that refreshed your recollection?
No, I don't remember any of that conversation either.
You don't remember how many people you told the deputies you saw that day,
I saw 2. That's what I told them.
but you don't remember telling the deputies something different.
No.
I'm going to show you now what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1.6. This is Deputy Monreal's report. And could you look at paragraph number 4, please?
I'm finished.
And does that refresh your memory?
No, I do not remember that conversation at all.
You remember telling the deputies 2 people. Is that
Ma'am, let's just speed this up. She only remembers one thing right now, and that is the script that they told her to say before she got on stand. She's not going to remember anything else other than the script she was memorized.
what you said?
2 people.
And that's what you told the agent as well?
That's what I told you mean the border patrol agents?
Right.
Yes. Yes.
So you
I
believe,
saw 2.
you believe you told them all you saw 2 people?
That's correct.
And so if they all have something different, if they all say you said 5, then they've all gotten it wrong?
Yes, because I saw 2. Alan said he saw 1. No, I don't know how the 5 came into that.
Okay. And so you don't know how Agent Heredia, Deputy Monreal, and Deputy Castaneda all got a number of 5 from you?
I do not know how they got that number.
But you'd agree with me that that's what their reports indicate, correct?
Yes.
little trouble with my computer, Your Honor, if I could have just a second.
Objection, delay of game. 15-yard penalty, automatic first down. This
And
guy
would you
can help
say
her.
that the men you saw, were they all armed?
The two men I saw were armed.
And you'd agree with me that you told Deputy Castaneda that not all of them were armed, correct?
I don't know about anyone but the last two. I don't know how these deputies got five. I don't know how I never saw five.
Do you recall telling Deputy Castaneda that not all of the people were armed?
It was in his transcript, but I do not remember telling him that because I never saw but two.
But you'd agree that that's what his report indicates, correct?
That is what his report said.
Now, you also talked to Detective Ainza that night, and we'll talk about the events in between a little later, but I want to talk about the statement that you gave to Detective Ainza. Now, Detective Ainza, you did tell him two men with huge backpacks, is that right?
Correct.
And what kind of weapons did you tell him that you observed?
They had rifles because they were long, not pistols.
But you told him something specific, didn't you?
That they were carrying them in front of themselves parallel to the ground.
Did you tell him what type of weapons specifically?
I don't know specifically. I just know it's a rifle.
Do you recall telling Detective Ainsa that they were carrying those AK-47 things?
I probably told him they could have been carrying them because I don't know the difference from a distance. A rifle, a BB gun, or an AK.
Mrs. Kelly, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 16. Could you turn to page 5, please?
I think
It's
Mrs.
a
Kelly is
transcript
doing a lot
of
of
Detective
lying up
Ainsa's
there.
interview.
I'm on page 5.
And could you go to lines 3 through 20 and read those, please?
I'm finished.
Okay, and was that accurate, Mrs. Kelly? Did you tell Detective Ainsa that they were carrying those AK-47 things?
I said they were like AK-47 things because they're a long rifle. Yes, in that report, I did say it's like AK-47s.
Council, I think this is a good time to take a mid-morning recess. Ladies and gentlemen, the jury will take our mid-morning recess. It's 10 to 10. We'll be back in 30 minutes at 10:20. We're in recess until 10:20.
Okay, that hour and 20 minutes went pretty fast, so I'm enjoying her up there. I'm enjoying her up there. She's lying. You can tell. Okay, here's why I think she's lying, and maybe I'm wrong. I wasn't there. I don't know, but when she already has the answer ready, like pre-made, She answers smooth, and it just comes out when she gets a question that she doesn't have a pre-made answer for, she stutters and stops and stutters and stops and thinks. And what she's trying to do is think about her pre-made answers and how they can fit to the question. But I don't know. I'm just a server.
Thank you. Everyone, please be seated. We can bring in the jurors, please.
I just keep hearing in my head now, Wanda, be quiet. Wanda, be quiet.
Rise. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. The record will reflect the presence of all the jurors, counsel, and the defendant. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, before I forget, for your planning purposes, the lawyers have some work to do this afternoon that will really help with the presentation of the evidence of the case. So we're just going to be recessing this afternoon at 4 p.m. All right? You can continue with your examination of the witness, Ms. Hunley.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Kelly, I think we were talking about, we had just finished talking about your statement to Detective Ainsa.
Ms. Hunley, I'm sorry, I think the witness is having a little bit of a difficulty hearing you, so just keep your voice up, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear all right?
Yes.
All right, all right.
I think we were talking about how many men you had reported to various officers. Is that right? Is that where we were before the break?
I believe so.
Okay. And in addition to Detective Ainsa, when you talked to Detective Ainsa, you actually told him what color clothing the men were wearing. Is that right?
I don't remember.
And you didn't tell Detective Ainsa they were wearing camo. You said they were wearing tan. Is that correct?
They were wearing what?
Tan.
If I told Detective Vines that they were wearing tan, then they were wearing tan because I can't remember now what color it was. It just wasn't important.
But you wouldn't disagree that you told him tan. Is that right?
What?
You would not disagree that you told him tan.
I
correct?
will not. If I told him that, then I probably had a better memory of the color then than I do now.
You also said that your husband was at the kitchen counter. Is that right?
I'm
Just a
sorry.
little while ago, you said that your husband was at the kitchen counter, correct?
When at the kitchen counter?
When your husband was having his lunch, you said that he was at the kitchen counter, correct?
Correct.
And do you remember, and isn't it true that you told Detective Ainsa that he was at the kitchen island?
I don't recall the island saying island because he was not at the island.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 16, page 10, line 6, counsel. And could you take a look at page 10, line 6?
I want to impeach this witness. Okay.
I'm finished.
Isn't it true that you told Detective Ainsa
I
that,
told Detective Hines, according to this, that there was a kitchen island. I don't see in there, it said he was standing at the kitchen island.
and Mrs. Kelly, I'm sorry to have to remind you of this, but if you'll let me finish my question, it'll make Denise's life a whole lot easier. So I'm going to read to you specifically what you just read then, since you don't agree with that. And Detective Ainsa asked you, how far were you from him? And you responded, how far? He was in the kitchen at the island. And I think I was in the living room, I don't know, playing with my cat. Is that what this said?
That's what it says.
I like her. Although if she's lying, she's a liar.
Now, you also spoke to Ron Martinelli, the defense investigator, on March 9th of 2023 about this incident, right?
Yes,
It was just a few weeks after this happened, correct?
yes,
And when you talked to him, you also told him that you saw two men with large brown backpacks and rifles, correct?
yes,
And then after that, on July 5th of 2023, you had a deposition with me, correct?
yes,
And on that date, you said you saw two men, but that you only saw one rifle, correct?
no,
You mad, bro? You mad? She's gonna rage quit.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's been marked as States Exhibit 27, page 85, lines 2 through 7, Counsel. I'm going to flip you to page 85, if you could look at lines 2 through 7. I'm sorry? The deposition? First one.
I'm finished.
And Mrs. Kelly, during that deposition, is that where you said that there was one long rifle between the two men?
No, ma'am, I just said they were carrying a gun. Sorry.
That's okay, these clips are...
She's rage quitting.
Here, ma'am.
Bless your heart.
And did you specifically say they were both dressed alike, they had tan clothing, they had huge brown backpacks on their backs, and they were carrying a gun, a rifle? I can't say what kind, it was just a long rifle is all I know.
That's what I said. They were carrying a gun.
And you said one gun though, correct?
No, not one gun, two. Each man had a gun, a
Okay.
rifle.
And you do agree that you said tan clothing in the
Yes, I did.
deposition? And I know it's hard, Mrs. Kelly, but if you could let me finish my question, it really will make things easier. If you'd let me finish my question before you answer. I know it's really hard. We don't do that in normal conversation.
I know.
Especially her.
And then in a later deposition on February 15th, that's when you told me both men had rifles, correct?
I told you both men had rifles. I do not remember the date.
Okay. Did we have another deposition on February 15th of this year?
Yes,
And during that deposition, do you remember telling me that both men had rifles?
yes.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Kelly, I'm going to show you a slide, and you tell me if this accurately summarizes what we just talked about, okay?
Okay?
For the public as well?
Oh, well, let's show it to her first.
Yes.
It's not an exhibit, it's demonstrative. Are you looking at the slide, Mrs. Kelly?
I am looking at it, yes.
And did we talk about a statement by Heredia where he says you told him 5 people with long arms and rifles?
I couldn't say there were 5 people. I never saw but 2.
But you say you told him 2, correct?
He says I told him 2. I don't remember telling him no, he said 5. I don't remember telling anyone that there was 5
Okay.
because I saw 2.
And then the same with Monreal, right? You
Correct.
say you told him 2, but he says 5, correct?
Correct.
And then Castaneda, he says you told him 5 people and you say 2.
And I say 2.
And he also said you told him not all of them were carrying rifles.
I don't remember telling him anything, so therefore,
So you disagree with that.
I disagree with that.
And then you'd agree with me that you told Detective Ainsa 2 men with huge backpacks and those AK-47 thingies, or like those AK-47 things.
Correct.
And then you told Martinelli the same thing, 2 men with dark brown backpacks and long rifles.
Correct.
And then we just talked about the 2 depositions. So that accurately summarizes what we just talked about, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, move to publish just for demonstrative purposes for the jury.
Judge. I'm going to object, Your Honor. It's inaccurate document. 1, this witness has denied these statements, and they're being posted as if they've been said with this witness. 2, it's not quoted properly with Ainsa, that it was like something. It's not saying it was something. That's not reflected on here. So I feel this is misrepresentation.
Your Honor, I believe that it's appropriate impeachment of the witness. I've impeached the witness. She's agreed that that's what the officers say. She denies telling the officers that, so this is appropriate impeachment. And it's just a summary for the jury to look at so that they can see them side by side.
The objection sustained.
All right, Mrs. Kelly, let's move on to the distance and the direction from your house that you made the observations. I'm sorry, and if you could remove the screen, please. Thank you. And I want to talk to you next about where it is that you told the officers that you saw the subjects. So when the Border Patrol first arrived, you told them that you saw the individuals, the 2 people you saw, south of your property, correct?
Not south.
Where did you tell them?
I saw them east of my property.
Okay. So did you tell us a little while ago southeast, walking southeast?
Walking southeast.
And then when you talked to Detective Ainsa, we talked a little while ago about you saying that you believe they were 100 feet from your property. Is that right?
Repeat the question, please.
Sure. When the men were outside your house and you looked out your left living room window, you said they were 100 feet from your house when you testified earlier. Is that right?
Today I said that, yes.
And you previously told Detective Ainsa 100 to 150 yards, correct?
Correct.
You'd agree that 100 feet and 100 yards is pretty different, correct?
Correct.
And you told Detective Ainsa that the men were just walking parallel across your property, correct?
The 2 I saw, yes.
And you also told him when you were talking to him, you gestured left to right. They were just walking parallel to your property, correct?
Correct.
And then on March 9th of 2023, you talked to the defense investigator, Ron Martinelli, right?
Correct.
And when you talked to Mr. Martinelli, he also asked you to estimate how far east the men were from your living room windows. Is that right?
Correct.
And you told him that you'd have to think about which golf club you use. And that after you thought about that for a while, you said 100 to 120 yards.
I did, but I never played golf very well.
But you actually moved to Keno Springs
I
because
did
of the
move
golf.
to Keno Springs for golf. I was addicted to it, but I was never very good at it.
I think that's probably true of a lot of folks. But you did tell him you were guessing which club you would use, and then you told him 100 to 120 yards.
Yes, and that would be my 7-iron.
And then you talked to him again 2 times on April 5th of 2023, and you didn't change the distance at all, correct?
Correct.
And it wasn't until July 5th of 2023 that in any recorded statement, you changed the distance where you said these men were, correct?
Correct.
Now, you also made some different statements about the number of shots you heard. Is that fair to say?
I don't know. I don't know what you're referring to. I told them 5 or 6.
When the deputies and the Border Patrol came out to your house the first time that day, you never told them it was Allen's shots you heard, did you?
I don't recall.
You don't remember if you told them it was Allen who was shooting?
I don't remember if I told them the shots I heard were Allen's.
Do you
I'm
think,
sorry.
Do you think that would be an important detail?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you think that would be an important detail?
If they would have asked.
Your Honor, I object to argumentative.
Sustain.
Would it have been important information for the officers to have as they were searching the property to know who had shot their weapon that day?
I don't know.
Okay. And isn't it true that when Deputy Monreal was there that day, you told Deputy Monreal you couldn't remember what happened, that maybe it was 4 shots?
Objection, leading.
Sustain.
I'm going to show you again Deputy Monreal's report. Could you take a look at that?
You want me to read the whole page?
I just want you to read the portion that's relevant to the question I asked you.
Okay.
You just let me know when you feel comfortable.
Does anybody remember the question? I do not.
Mrs. Kelly, isn't it true that you told Deputy Monreal that you heard 4 shots?
I'm going to object to leading.
She can answer, overrule.
Hmm?
You can answer.
I was not counting. My husband was out there facing these guys with guns. And you think I'm going to stand there and count how many times I hear a shot? You're crazy.
Mrs. Kelly, I'm just asking you if that's what you told me.
I did not tell him 4. I told him I saw 2. That's all I saw.
We're talking about the shots now.
Now the shots. Well, I did say maybe 5 or 6 later, but I don't know.
Isn't it true, Mrs. Kelly, that you told Deputy Monreal that you believed it was 4 shots?
I don't remember talking to that deputy, so I don't remember telling him 4 shots.
So you disagree with his report?
Your
Yes,
Honor,
I do.
Your Honor, I'm objecting. She said she didn't know and remember talking to him, so she can't testify to it.
It's just state.
And you said that you couldn't tell them apart. You couldn't tell them apart. Is that right?
Couldn't tell what apart.
The deputies.
No, I could not, except that one was a lady.
So you don't know which ones you spoke to, or if
No,
you
I do
spoke to
not.
the same different ones.
I don't know if I spoke to same ones, different ones. The only 2 I remember is Detective Ainza and Barba.
But you spoke to the deputies that day, right?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Now, you also spoke to Deputy Castaneda that day. I'm going to show you his report. This is State's Exhibit 1. Could you take a look? And you gave Deputy Castaneda a different amount, a different answer with respect to what you heard. Is that right?
What about the candy?
Okay, what was your question?
My question is, you gave Deputy Castaneda a different answer about what you heard that day, right?
I don't even see in there what he said I heard. I'm sorry.
Let me take you to the line. You'll look at the last paragraph, and it's in the last line, and then you can flip over to the next page if you like.
I see what he says.
And you gave him a different answer than you did to the other deputy, didn't you?
If they remember it differently, then yes, I guess I did. All I ever said was I saw 2. I don't know how many there were. I didn't see the others. I saw 2.
We're talking about the shots right now. And you
And
told,
shots, I don't remember the shots. I don't know whether I told him 4 and him 5 or 6. Because it's irrelevant. I mean, he shot. You found the things, but what does it matter if I remember 4 or 6?
ma'am,
Ma'am,
can you answer my question, please? Did you tell Deputy Castaneda that you were confused about what you heard?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to asked and answered.
Overrule.
repeat the question.
Sure. Didn't you tell Deputy Castaneda that you were confused about what shots you heard?
I
I'm
hope so.
going
I
to
don't
sustain the
know.
objection. She's testified before on this. She's answered that question before. Not
Okay.
what she told the deputy, but she's made it plain that she was confused.
Let's move on to your conversation with Detective Ainsa. You met with Detective Ainsa that night. We talked about that already, correct?
Correct.
And when you spoke to Detective Ainsa, you talked about the incident at length. Is that right?
I don't remember at length. I answered his questions.
And when you spoke to Detective Ainsa, the first time you went through your story, you didn't say anything at all about Alan shooting at anyone, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, when the detective asked you specifically what Alan did when he went outside, you never said anything about Alan shooting his gun. Is that right?
I don't recall, but if that's what Ainsa said, then that's what I told him.
Well, let me show you the transcript. We don't have to take his word for it.
Waiting for Mr. Kelly to say, Wanda, be quiet.
The Ainsa interview, page 7. Showing you what's been marked at States Exhibit 16. If you could turn to page 7, please. And if you could look specifically at line 9, please.
Do what?
If you could look specifically at line 9 and 10.
Line 9, okay.
9 and 10.
Okay, I've read line 9 and 10.
Okay. And did you say to him, and what did your husband do after and he's asking you what he did when you went outside, and you said he was watching him and then he followed him. I'm sorry. And he said, and what did he do outside? And you said he was watching him and he followed him. Is that right?
Correct.
So at that point, you didn't tell him at all about Alan shooting. Is that right?
Correct.
In fact, it wasn't until the detective told you that your husband had already admitted in an interview that he shot that you talked about
Objection,
Alan
lady.
shooting, correct?
Sustain. Don't answer the question. Sustain.
When was it that you told Detective Ainsa that your husband shot his weapon during that interview?
I do not know. I
Was
don't
it-
know what specific time or question or whatever.
Okay, so let me just back up a little bit. So my question to you was, you didn't tell Detective Ainsa initially when you told your story that your husband had shot his weapon, right?
Right?
And then later in the interview, you did tell him that he shot his weapon. Is that right?
Yes, I guess.
And what was it that happened that Detective Ainsa told you that caused you to tell him that your husband had shot his weapon?
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fair. At some point during the interview, you admitted your husband had shot his weapon. Is that right?
Yes.
When did that happen? Was that after the detective confronted you with something?
I don't know.
If I showed you your deposition, would that refresh your memory?
Let's hope so.
Do you still have Exhibit 16 in front of you?
Ma'am?
Do you still have Exhibit 16 in front of you?
No.
Or did I take it back? Okay, I'm going to ask you to turn to page 18, please, of State's Exhibit 16.
Okay. You said page 15
18.
or 18? Excuse me. Okay, I'm on page 18.
And actually, if you could start with page 17. Would you read all of page 17 and page 18 to yourself, please, ma'am?
She gave her 2 whole pages to read. She's not going to remember it. She's going to confuse her even more.
Okay, I'm finished.
Thank you. And did Detective Ainsa tell you that your husband had been interviewed and admitted to shooting?
Admitting to shooting up in the air.
That wasn't my question, ma'am. Did
Okay.
Detective Ainsa, I know it can be a little complicated, but did Detective Ainsa tell you during the interview that your husband had been interviewed and admitted to shooting?
I don't understand your question. You say he admitted to shooting, but are you trying to ask me what he was shooting at or anything? I don't understand your question.
No, it's not a trick question. I'm asking you what Detective Ainsa said to you in the transcript that you just read. The transcript you just read, did Detective Ainsa tell you that your husband had been interviewed and that he admitted shooting?
He admitted to shooting, yes.
Okay. And then after that, is that when you told him that your husband had shot warning shots?
Yes,
But you didn't observe your husband shooting, you just heard it, correct?
I just heard it.
And then when Detective Ainsa asked you how many shots that your husband shot that day, what did you tell him?
I don't know.
Could you take a look at page 18?
Your Honor.
Yeah.
He asked me only
Hold
one
on,
shot.
Wanda.
Excuse me.
That's all right. Hold on a second. Thanks.
I just want to make a
Wanda, be quiet.
prediction that we're going into 404B, and I just wanted to make sure that it's relevant only to this, but not to historical.
Well, I have no idea what's on the transcript or what
Oh.
she's looking at, so let's go on the headsets here and discuss that. If you'd stand by, okay?
Wanda can't go into 404B now. Be quiet, Wanda. I want to hear Wanda hear more questions. I want to hear Wanda get upset.
Mrs. Kelly, did you tell Detective Ienza, well, I heard a shot, so I assume so. And he asked you, only one shot? And you responded, I don't know. And then he asked you, you don't know? And you say, and he says, okay, I did know there was one. Is that what you told Detective Ienza?
Yes.
Now then, about 5 or 6 weeks later, you talked to Ron Martinelli on March 9th of 2023. We talked about that, correct?
Correct.
And when you talked to Ron Martinelli, you told him that you heard 5 to 6 shots. Is that right?
I suppose. I don't know.
Would you like me to show you the transcript?
Yeah.
Showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 125, which is the March 9th, 2023 transcript of an interview with Ron Martinelli. And could you please turn to page 7?
But really, can you start at page 6? Read all 15 pages. Wanda, give that man some of
And
your
this is a
candy.
single-space transcript without lines, so I'll try to help you get to the right spots. If you go about 2/3 of the way down the page, and you're welcome to read the whole page if you like, but about 2/3 of the way down the page, it starts with, Wanda, if they're shooting, it's going to be bad. You don't want to watch it. I heard shots. Do you see that line?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that help you?
Yes.
Can you tell me how many shots you told Dr. Martinelli?
5 or 6.
Thank you. And what did you tell Dr. Martinelli about those shots?
What do you mean, what I tell him about those shots?
Did you tell him where they were with respect to where you were?
Where they were in respect to where I was?
Sure. Let me explain that a little better. When you told Dr. Martinelli about the shots, did you tell him how close they were?
I told him they were close, yes.
Okay. And after the shooting that you heard, that you assumed was your husband out on the patio, you didn't hear any more shots that day, is that right?
Correct.
And you only heard Alan's shots on the patio.
I only heard the close shots, if that's the only one shooting, and then I heard 5 or 6 of his shots.
And you told Ron Martinelli that in that March 9th interview we were just talking about, right?
Yes.
And then we had a deposition, like I said, on July 5th of 2023. Is that right?
I don't remember the date, but you and I have had several talks.
Okay. And I'm talking about the first talk. During that first talk, you gave me a different number. You told me we talked about the 5 or 6 shots. Is that right?
I don't recall.
Did you also tell me that it could have been as many as 9 shots that day?
I don't know, but it could have been as many as 9.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 27, and if you could turn to page 101, please.
101.
It's the deposition. And ma'am, could you read to yourself lines 1 through 4? And can you tell me, did you tell me on that date it could have been as many as 9 shots?
Okay, I'm finished.
And did you tell me that it could have been as many as 9 shots during
Yes,
that
I did.
deposition? Now, during your interview with Detective Ainza, did the detective at one point ask you, actually, we'll get back to that in just a minute. I want to go back to what happened after you saw Alan walk down the road. And I forgot to ask you something earlier. When you handed the phone to Alan at the east side patio door after you called Jeremy Morcell, did you overhear that conversation?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember indicating that you did not hear the call to Jeremy Morcell?
I'm sorry, you'll have to repeat that question.
Sure. Do you remember telling us you did not hear that call to Jeremy Morcell?
No, I do not remember telling you that.
Okay, we'll find that reference in a minute for you.
George Kelly's like, see what I live with? She
While
don't
my
remember
co-counsel is
nothing.
looking for that, we'll move on. And I asked you about Alan's AK-47 that day, but you told me earlier that he normally wears a gun on his hip as well. Is that right?
Correct.
And he had that gun on his hip when he went outside that day as well, didn't he?
Yes.
And after Alan went down the road, a little bit later, that's when law enforcement started to arrive at your house. Is that right?
Repeat it, please. I'm sorry. I don't
Sure.
understand you.
Sure. I want to go back to where we were earlier. We were talking about how you looked out the window and you saw Alan walking down the road.
Correct.
You didn't see any people at that time, right? Just Alan.
Just Alan and his dogs.
And he was walking down the road, you said.
Yes.
And after he went down the road, at some point, law enforcement arrived at your house. Is that right?
Yes.
And you talked to those officers we just talked about a few minutes ago, Agent Heredia and the 2 deputies that you don't recall, but you remember talking to Border Patrol and to deputies that day.
I remember I saw the Border Patrol out through the window. I opened the door and I said they were walking over there. Alan's down at the barn.
And after that, after you spoke to them, then you received a phone call. Is that right?
After I spoke to them, I received a phone call, not that
Yes.
I know of.
Was it before you spoke to them? Did your husband call you at some point that day?
He called me and it was before I spoke to the Border Patrol because he called me and told me he was at the barn. Tell the Border Patrol I'm down here.
And when you talked to him that day, he told you, what did he tell you about which direction the people went?
He said he couldn't tell where they went. He just went to the barn.
And did he tell you where it was that he lost sight of them?
No,
At some point, did he tell you they went to the wash?
no.
Mrs. Kelly, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 49, which is a transcript of our second deposition on February 15th of 2024.
And what page, please?
If you could please turn to page 58.
Okay, question?
My question was, when your husband called you, did he tell you where it was that he lost sight of them?
He did not tell me where he lost sight of them. He just said he did not see them, which way they went,
And where were they when he didn't see which way they went?
at the wash.
So he saw them to the wash, and then he lost sight of which direction they went when they hit the wash. Is that what he told you?
Correct, that's correct.
At some point that day, after law enforcement were there, did Alan come back up to the house before law enforcement left the first time they were there?
Did he come to the house before they left? Yes,
Yes. He actually came back to the house with the Border Patrol, is that, and the deputies, is that right?
he came back walking and the Border Patrol, I don't know who was with him.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
that's
I didn't
okay.
observe it.
That's okay, no problem. He came back to the house while law enforcement was still there the first time they were there.
Yes, yes.
And when he came back to the house, did he have his AK-47 with the green strap with him at that point?
Yes.
Do you know where he put it inside the house?
No.
And when he came back to the house, he talked to law enforcement while he was there at the house. Is that right?
Correct.
And then at some point, law enforcement leave.
Correct.
And then it was a little bit later that you all are talking about what you're going to do for dinner. Is that right?
Correct. I asked him what time he wanted to have dinner.
And what did y'all decide?
I can't remember now if he said 5:30 or 6,
At
but it was some in that time frame.
okay. And then what did he need to do before he had dinner?
He was going out to feed the horse and the dogs.
And did he leave the house?
He went out of the house, yes.
Did he take his AK-47 with him on that occasion?
No.
And when he went outside to feed the horse and the dog, did he come back?
Yes.
How quickly did he return?
I don't know.
Was it quicker than you expected him to return?
Yes, because I didn't expect him to be in until I had dinner prepared.
And what did he tell you when he came back?
When he came back, what?
When he came back to the house, what did he
Yes.
tell you?
That the dogs found a dead body.
And do you recall Deputy Ainsa asking you if your husband came back in after he went out that second time?
Now, Ainsa and I have a disagreement on how many times, what time is what. The first time he came in was when he made his sandwich. The second time he came in was, let's see, what was the second time? He made his sandwich and then they went down and he walked down to see if everything was okay at the barn. So he came in, that was the second time. And then when he went out to feed the horse and came back in, that was the third time. So he says, what did he tell you on the second time? The second time's when he came back from the barn.
So, Mrs. Kelly, would you disagree that you deliberately told Detective Iansa that you did not know that your husband had found a dead body on your property?
I did not tell him that. He just asked me, did I know why they were there?
I'm going to show you again what's been marked as State's Exhibit 16, please.
I feel it.
And could you please
Get
turn
mad
to
again.
page 15, line 11?
You said page 15?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
What was that? I didn't hear her. And she said something, something, something about the house. That's all I heard.
Okay, the timing on those questions and answers is not right, but I have read it.
Okay. Did Detective Iansa ask you, did your husband ever mention to you what he discovered the second time he came back to the house?
The second time he came back to the house was after it was with the Border Patrol and the police. And he didn't tell me he found anything.
Let me stop you for just a second. I'm asking you to look at the transcript and see if I'm reading it correctly, okay?
Okay.
Can you take a look at the transcript? Just let me know if I read it correctly, all right?
You can read it correctly because I can, but the timing is wrong.
Okay, so I'd like to go through that with you, okay?
Okay.
All right. Did Detective Iansa ask you, did your husband ever mention to you what he discovered the second time he came back to the house? Is that what he said?
That's what Ainsa said, yes.
And then did you say to him, no, he went out to feed the horse and the dogs, and he came in and I asked him what time he wanted to have. No, he was inside with me. I don't know. Well, he was we're doing stuff on the computer. Yes. And then I asked him what time he wanted to have dinner, and he said, oh, about 6 o'clock. He said, I got to go out and feed the horse and the dogs. And the detective says, okay. And you say, and so he went out, and then he didn't come back, and then you all showed up.
Hold on.
Sorry, Your Honor, I'm objecting. We're just reading from something that's not entered into evidence, a narrative, and it's not, I don't know where it stops as far as any refreshing of a question. So I'm going to object to the hearsay.
No, this isn't refreshing recollection. This is impeachment. The witness said she did not say that, and I'm impeaching her with the transcript. The transcript doesn't have to be admitted for me to impeach her with the transcript.
Let's go ahead.
Just make a ruling, Judge. You're the judge. It's just so rude that we can almost hear him. Almost. again. Delay of game. 15-yard penalty. Let's go, people. We're losing daylight. Oh, they said they're stopping early today, but they're never going to stop early. It's already been. Oh, this is AM. So the next video is going to be short. Or I don't know how much shorter. 4 o'clock doesn't seem that early to stop. I don't know what she's laughing at. She's just making us sit here and listen to nothing. He didn't even put on that white noise box for us. Maybe I should play music. I liked today's trial. I liked it. I liked it. It was very entertaining. I still think she's going to get mad one more time. Come on, Judge. What's going on? I can't really fast forward it to see. Hold on. All right, I think it goes to here, but yeah, wow, we would have sat there for a while.
Technology. You still have that transcript in front of you, is that right?
I'm sorry?
You still have that transcript in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, the question I had for you is, when you met with Detective Ainsa, isn't it true that you never told him that when your husband went outside to go feed the dogs and the horses, that he came back in and told you that the dogs found a dead body?
I repeat the question. I don't know when you say I told him what.
Sure. Well, let me just back up a little bit, okay? So I'm sure,
Okay.
because there was a long pause in between, I want to make sure we know exactly what we're talking about. Now, you testified a little while ago that you had some conversation with your husband about going outside at 6 o'clock, or having dinner about 6 o'clock, and that he went outside to feed the dogs and the horses. Is that right?
Yes,
And he came back pretty quickly and told you the dogs found a dead body.
correct.
And my question to you is, when you talked to Detective Ainsa, isn't it true that you pretended not to know that your husband had come back in and that the dogs had found a dead body?
No, I did not pretend not to know. He was asking me when my husband came in the second time, what did he say he found? Second time my husband came in, he talked to the police on the front porch. He came in, he watched the little TV, he took a nap. I was doing stuff on the computer. Then he says, I've got to go out and feed the dogs and the horse. I said, what time would you like to have dinner? About 6 o'clock. I said, oh, good. I got time to finish something on the computer. So he went out, but came back after he found the dogs discovered there was a dead body there. And he told me the dogs found a dead body, but that was the third time he came out. So that's why the order is incorrect.
So Mrs. Kelly, that's not what the
All right,
transcript
let's ask a
says, though,
question.
correct?
Let's ask a-
transcript
All right,
was-
hold on. Ask questions. Let's ask questions.
Did the detective ask you, did your husband ever mention to you what he discovered the second time he came back to the house? Is that what he asked you?
That's what he asked me.
And then did you respond, no, he went out to feed the horse and the dogs, and he came in, and I asked him what time he wanted to have. No, he was inside with me.
That's
Can I
where
finish?
I messed up.
Okay,
I gave Einza the wrong timeline. Alan was inside with me after the detectives all left. He was doing something, I was doing something, and then he says, I gotta go feed the dogs and the horse because it's getting late. I said, what time would you like to have dinner? He said 6 o'clock. So then he left. And that's when the dogs found the dead body.
and you say that to Detective Ainsa during the interview, correct? You say to
No,
him,
I've read the transcript. I gave him the information out of order.
you said to him, and then I asked him what time he wanted to have dinner. He said, oh, about 6 o'clock. He said, I gotta go out and feed the horse and the dogs. And you said, okay. And then the detective says, okay. And then you say, and so he went out and then he didn't come back. And then you all showed up. Is that correct? Did I read that correctly?
Yes. Because he didn't ask me if he came back in after he fed the horses and the dog. He didn't.
Okay. But your statement said, he said, I gotta go out and feed the horse and the dogs. And so he went out and then he didn't come back. And then you all showed up. Is that what you told the detective?
That is what I told him.
And then the detective continued to ask you if anyone had told you what was discovered at your property, and you told him no. Is that right?
He said, has anyone told you? And I assumed, which is a bad thing to do, anyone is any of the police officers that are out there roaming around and talking to my husband. And none of them told me what they were doing or why they were there until the young lady came to take me to the car.
But at first you told him no, right?
Yes,
You told him no one had told you what had happened on your property.
because no one had. Alan had, but no one had. Police officers did not. They didn't tell me why they were on my property. They didn't tell me what they were looking for. And I'm not going to just jump in and say things.
Mrs. Kelly, didn't you then tell the detective that only that, yes, who was it? The lady female police officer, she said something about they found a dead body. So I knew that.
That's how I knew that. She was walking me to the car.
But that was after you'd told him you didn't know anything at all, correct?
The timeline's all out of whack. I'm sure I don't understand. That night was so confusing. I could have told you that the sun rose in the west because I was so mixed up. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry for getting angry.
Mrs. Kelly, I just have to ask you, is there some reason why you felt you needed to hide what your husband had found that night from the police?
No, I did not feel anything reason to hide anything.
You didn't tell the police about the fact that he had discharged his gun until they told you he'd admitted it, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't tell them that he told you he'd found a dead body, correct?
Correct.
And she didn't give you her cell phone.
I'm sorry, Judge. I'm losing my temper.
Would you like to take a break?
No,
Are you
not
sure?
unless it's lunchtime. We'll wait it till my lunchtime.
All right.
I'll just try to control myself.
Girl's gone wild on the stand.
Now, Mrs. Kelly, I want to talk a little bit about your hearing aids. Is that okay?
About my hearing aids?
Yes.
Okay,
So as I understand it, you had your hearing aids in that day. Is that right?
correct,
And you told the detectives that your first one went out at 6:30 or 7, and you were still at the house and you put that on the charger. Is that right?
correct,
And then your second one actually went out later that night when you were at the police station, correct?
correct.
And at one point, you actually told Ron Martinelli that you didn't have your hearing aids in that day on April 5th, correct?
He asked me and I told him I didn't think I did.
And then you corrected that. Is that right?
I corrected it because he said, Detective Ainsley said you had them in. I said, well, if Detective Ainsley said I had them in, I had them in. That night, I would have known whether I had them in, whereas 3 or 4 weeks later, I might not have remembered because they were not working properly.
Now, you never told Detective Ainsa that there was any functionality problems with your hearing aids, only that they didn't always work as well as you'd like, correct?
I'm sorry?
You never told Detective Ainsa that there was any functional problem with your hearing aids, only that they didn't work as well as you'd like. Is that right?
They didn't work as well as they used to, no.
And then you never told Ron Martinelli on March 9th that there was any kind of functional problem with your hearing aids. Is that right?
I don't remember.
Would you like to take a look at your transcript?
No,
Have you reviewed your transcript?
no.
You haven't reviewed it?
No.
Well, let me just show you the spots.
You're going to drive this woman a drink. She's going to pull out a flask.
Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 125. And this is your first interview on March 9th with Ron Martinelli.
Okay.
And do you recall talking to him about your hearing aids on that date?
Which page was I supposed to look at?
I haven't referred you to a page yet. Do you remember on this occasion talking to him at all about your hearing aids?
I remember he asked me if I had them in. I told him I couldn't remember, and I do not know if I explained to him why I couldn't remember, because they were malfunctioning. I got new ones replaced, and
That was on April 5th that you had a conversation about your hearing aids, correct? That wasn't on March 9th. Is that right?
ma'am, I'm so confused on dates. I don't know what date you're talking about. I don't know what happened on that day.
Okay, so the first time that you met with Ron Martinelli, that he recorded you, when you gave him a lengthy explanation of what happened on this date. That's the one I'm talking about for now.
Okay, so that was March 9th?
That's right.
Okay, I see it on the transcript.
Do you see anywhere in that transcript that you talked to Ron Martinelli about your hearing aids?
Your Honor, I'm going to object unless she wants to reference an area. This is pretty voluminous for her to read in court. We got pages of full text and
Your Honor, I provided this in advance to her attorney, Mr. Larkin, so that she could review it in advance of today.
without any questions specific so she could review those topics.
Mrs. Kelly, you've
Do you-
reviewed,
do you, regarding the hearing aids, is there a particular place that you can direct her to where those items are discussed? That would expedite things.
there isn't, Your Honor, because she didn't discuss any problems with her hearing aids on March 9th. She's telling me she did. I'm asking her to tell me where it is.
She's not going to read the whole transcript here in open court. So the objection is
No, that's
sustained.
just-
On April 5th, you had some conversations with him about your hearing aids, and you told him at that time that you had your hearing aids in when you talked to him on the first occasion, correct?
Repeat that. I'm sorry, you
Sure.
lost me.
April 5th. So we're talking about the next occasion that you talked, or one of the other occasions that Ron Martinelli recorded a conversation with you.
Correct.
And that day, that's the day you told him you had your hearing aids in, correct?
I don't know. I don't know what day it was. I remember he said to me, "Did you have your hearing aids in?" I told him I didn't remember. He said, "Detective Einza," he came back later and said, "Detective Einza said you said your hearing aids were in." I said, "Well, if my hearing aids were in that night and I told Einza they were, then they were."
And when you had that conversation with Ron Martinelli, you never told him anything about any problems with your hearing aids. That's what I'm asking you. Is that correct?
Probably. He probably didn't ask.
And you didn't tell him either in April, is that right?
Right.
Now, Mrs. Kelly, when I want to go back to the beginning, January 30th of 2023, when you were in the house and Alan had gone outside and you started to hear shots, did you ever call 911?
No.
Did you ever go around and lock the doors and windows?
No.
Did your husband ever come back inside before he headed off southeast towards the people to check on you?
No.
After you heard him shooting his AK-47?
After he was shooting and I looked out and saw him walking down, he had not come back in.
And he left you there alone and hadn't checked on you, is that right?
He didn't, he called me from the barn.
But he left you there alone,
Yes.
and before he left, he never checked on you, is that right?
He didn't. No.
And you have a handgun, is that right?
I had one. Yes.
And did you go and get your handgun at that point?
No.
And and that's because you didn't think you needed it, is that right?
Because I just didn't think about getting it.
Did you,
Alan was outside. He was taking care of me, and I did not need to get my gun out. I did not think.
did you tell me during a deposition that you didn't think you needed your gun at that time?
I don't know.
Mrs. Kelly, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 49, and I'll give you a page reference in just a second.
They said she's frustrated. I heard that. We're not. We're happy. She's only got 9 more minutes. She's all right. She'll make it. objection, delay of game.
Ma'am, could you please turn to page 58? The second deposition?
58.
Actually, it starts on 57. If you'd start on page 57.
Of course it does.
Okay.
Just at the bottom of the page, and then you can go over to page 58, please.
Okay. I'm at 57.
Could you read the bottom 4 lines and then go over to page 58 and read the top 3 lines?
Okay, how far did you want me to read?
Just the top 3 lines. Are you there?
Oh, okay, okay, I've read the top 3 lines.
And did you tell me during your deposition, I had a weapon if I'd been in the house alone and thought I needed it? And then I asked you, but you didn't think you needed it? And you said, not at that time, no.
Not at that time, no. Border Patrol was on their way.
So that's when your husband had left after shooting and was walking down the road. You didn't feel you needed a gun. Is that right?
No.
In fact, Mrs. Kelly, you didn't believe these men that were 100 to 150 yards from your house meant you any harm. Is that right?
Repeat the first
Your Honor, I'm
part.
going to object to leading.
Sustain.
Did you believe that these men meant you any harm? The men that were passing by your house?
I was terrified. I don't know that they meant me any harm other than to scare us to death.
Well, did you tell?
But they were carrying guns and backpacks, so yes, I was afraid.
So that wasn't my question. My question is, do you think they were there to cause you any harm or any harm to your property or any harm to your husband?
I wouldn't have any idea.
Well, when Detective Ainsa asked you that question on that night, you told him you didn't think they were there to cause you any harm or any harm to your property. Is that right?
Sweetheart, I could have told him the sky was purple that night. I'm sorry. I was all messed up.
Showing you again what's been marked as State's Exhibit 16. And could you turn please to page 20, starting on line 16. And did Detective Ainsa ask you, oh, you let me know when you're done reading, sorry.
I see what he asked me, and I see my answer. So what's your question?
My question is, did Detective Ainsa ask you, do you think these men were at your house to cause any harm to your property, to you or your husband, or they were just walking by? And your response was, I would say they were walking by. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I had one more reference that we talked about earlier that I just need to follow up with you on. And I had asked you if you heard the conversation between your husband and Jeremy Morcell. Is that right?
You asked me, yes.
And you said that you did hear that conversation, is that right?
I heard the conversation at the door. When I initially made the call, I heard that conversation.
Okay. Showing you now what's been marked as State's Exhibit 27. This is a copy of your deposition on July 6th of 2023. You could hand me that other one back.
Okay. Don't
Thank you.
much met.
And if you could turn, please, to page 89, or I think it starts on page 88.
'88.
And what is it that you heard of that conversation between your husband and Jeremy Morcell?
What I heard my husband tell Jeremy Morcell on the phone when I handed it to him was, we have people out here on our property. They have guns. I heard a shot and I'm going out.
And that's what you remember?
That's what I remember.
And
Memorized.
did you tell me during that deposition that you only heard a few things during the conversation?
That was a few things, wasn't it? It was just the entire conversation, a few things.
Okay. So you actually heard the whole conversation, not just.
Correct. At the door, yes. Now, when he called Jeremy Morcell the second time, I never heard any of that conversation.
Okay. That's all I had for you. Thank
Okay.
you. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, Your Honor. I guess I'm not done. Thank you. That's all I had, Your Honor. Thank you.
Very well. Counsel, let's get on it. We're going to take our lunch recess. We'll be in recess till 1:30. Please be back in the jury room at 1:30, and we'll continue with the examination, cross-examination of the witness by the defense.
Okay, that was a better day. That one was a better day than the other ones. That was more entertaining. It's because the other ones were like professionals, police officers, medical examiners. She's a regular person. That's what we need. We need more trials with regular people on the stand and not so many police officers because they're boring. They tell the truth and nothing but the truth. So help them God. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming out today. So this is 3 in a row. I'm getting them out quicker. Hopefully, I can keep doing this. The only problem is I fall asleep during Judge Fleischer's docket sometimes, and I'm supposed to be a mod. Linus, if you're watching this, Maiko, if you're watching this, Ozzy, if you're watching this, Legal, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. Like, I have to sleep sometime. Don't worry, we'll be done with this trial soon enough because I'm really, really excited to see what happens on day 14. And I'm just probably going to keep talking about it until we get to it. It has to be when George takes the stand, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for watching this. I will talk to you all later. Bye bye.